Hi everyone, welcome back to Beautiful British English, where we give you free bite-sized English fluency lessons. And today I have another IELTS speaking hack for you. And this is all about storytelling. Right, so storytelling. Why is storytelling important and how do you tell a story in your IELTS exam? So let me just first explain what I mean by storytelling. Now, I don't mean, obviously, a big story. I don't mean a story as long as a movie or a story as long as a book. I mean a short story. A short story that will help you to demonstrate your English skills, your English vocabulary, your grammar, your pronunciation, your fluency in general. Now, this story, ideally, it should be a true story. It's better, it doesn't have to be true. You can create something if you want, but a true story is better because a true story is real for you guys, and a true story is also something that's easier for you to talk about because you can visualize in your minds. Ideally, it should be interesting, but it also has to be quite a general story because it has to be relating or relatable to almost anything else. I always think any story is more interesting if there are other people involved. So I'm going to recommend that there are other people involved, at least one other person involved in your story. And I'm going to recommend that you also include a specific location and a specific time in your story. Okay, so this is what I mean by a story. Now, your story, you should be able to tell your story, your full story, in, I don't know, 60 seconds. Yeah, but within that 60 seconds, you should be able to demonstrate fluency in the English language. And you can prepare this story well in advance, so you have this story to use at any point during your exam. You can also use the whole story, or you can use just a part of this story at any point during the exam as well. So, let me give you guys an example of a short story that you can use in your exam, and then after I've given you an example of a short story, I will show you how you can use this story to improve your IELTS speaking exam score. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate my short story to you. Now, my short story, the theme for my short story I've chosen is books, but the theme could be anything. Yeah, I've chosen books because it's a very simple thing to demonstrate to you guys, and I know books is a very common IELTS speaking sort of question. Yeah, so you may be asked the question, what was the last book that you read? Yeah, and perhaps you don't have an answer to that question. So here's my short story to answer a question, what was the last book you read, when I don't have an answer. So, question, what was the last book that you read? Well, that's very interesting. I don't really read many books. It's been a long time since I read anything, but last Tuesday afternoon I was actually in a cafe drinking coffee with my best friend, and he told me that he had just finished reading a novel, a new novel, and this novel was about a boy who flies kites. He said it was absolutely amazing and that I ought to go and read this book straight away. Okay, so that's my short story, and I've made my short story very specific to talking about books. But you can see from my short story that I could be talking about almost anything. Yeah. Let's have a quick look, okay, at some of what I said and why I said it. So, first of all, I introduced the subject by saying, well, that's very interesting, but actually, I don't read very often. I don't, I haven't read a book for a long time. Yeah, so that is just being very honest to the examiner and saying, look, I don't really have a book that I can talk about. But last Tuesday afternoon, I was in a cafe with my best friend. You may think this is nothing to do with books. It isn't anything to do with books right now, but it's going to become something to do with books. This sentence is also a great sentence because it allows us to demonstrate describing time periods, last Tuesday afternoon, time period, a place, a location, and also other people. Yeah. Now, I didn't really elaborate on the place, I didn't give any extra details, but in your story, you may want to describe the location in more detail. You may want to describe the people or the person in more detail. I chose not to in my story, but you can choose to. He or she told me that. This is reported speech. He or she told me that. So this is demonstrating that we can report information that we've been given. He or she told me that. He or she had just finished reading or had just read. Yeah, past perfect. One of the most underused tenses in the English language. Not many people demonstrate using the past perfect in an IELTS speaking exam, but because we're using reported speech, it gives us a great opportunity to demonstrate using the past perfect here. He or she had just read or just finished reading a novel. And he or she said it was, again, reported speech in using the past simple form. Absolutely amazing. Totally interesting. Adverb and adjective vocabulary combinations are really powerful things in English. Native users of English use this combination all the time. Okay, so practice describing things using a combination of an adverb and an adjective. Okay, so he or she said it was absolutely amazing. The story was absolutely amazing. Okay, this book was about whatever. And afterwards, he said, I ought to read it straight away. I ought to read it straight away. Ought to is one of our more advanced modal verbs that, again, not many people use in an IELTS exam, but you can use it in this short story. He or she said, and afterwards, he or she said, I ought to read it straight away. And afterwards, again, this is another great phrase that demonstrates that you can sequence events. Yeah, so he said this and afterwards he said that. So, although not a perfect story, yeah, this story on its own has some great vocabulary, it has some excellent use of tenses, and it is very, very fluent. Okay, so this is my little story. Okay, next what I want to do is demonstrate how we can use or adapt this story to talk about absolutely anything. Okay, so I hope you have got a good idea right now about what I mean by creating yourself a short story that you can use to talk about different subjects such as books. Yeah. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how you can use the same story, and in this story I'm still going to keep my subject as books, but I'm going to add to this subject as well. So the book that I talk about will be about something very, very specific. Yeah? Now, just to give you some examples, the book that I'm going to refer to in my short story could be relating to health. So it could be relating to doctors, nurses, hospitals. The book could be relating to politics. Yeah? The book could be relating to technology. The book itself could be related to anything. Yeah? Do you understand? So this story gives us a great opportunity to talk about anything. Yeah? Because the book can be about anything. A book can be about anything. So I'm going to choose the subject of health, and I'm going to choose the sub-subject of health, and diet and exercise. Yeah, I can't say that I particularly know anything about diet and exercise, except that I probably know it's important. Okay? Yeah, so a typical question about diet and exercise in IELTS might be, what do you do to keep fit and healthy? Or how important do you think it is to maintain a healthy body? Yeah? And some people might find talking about this kind of subject or answering this question quite difficult. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my short story, which you already know about, refer back to the book, and the book is going to be referring to health, and in particular, diet and fitness. Are you ready? Okay, so let's imagine the question is, how important do you think it is to keep fit and healthy? Yeah, I don't know exactly what the question would be, but how important do you think it is to keep fit and healthy? So my answer to that question is going to be, well, that's a very interesting question. You know, actually, last Tuesday afternoon, I was in a cafe with my wife, and she told me that she had just finished reading a book about sort of diet and fitness, and she said it was absolutely interesting. This book was about how food affects your body, how food affects your mind. And afterwards, she told me that I ought to read this book straight away. Yeah? Do you see what I did? It was the same story that you heard a few minutes ago, just talking about books in general, but now the book I'm referring to is now a book on health, and more specifically, diet and fitness. Now, I didn't time myself, but I think my answer was probably about 30 seconds, give or take. Yeah? And I think 30 seconds is more than enough time to give you the opportunity to answer any question in an IELTS speaking exam. Yeah? Try this technique. Yeah? Work out a story. Your story can be about something that you've read, something that somebody read, somebody watched, somebody heard. So it could be about podcasts, it could be about TV shows, it could be documentaries, movies. Doesn't matter. Just work out a story that you can use to introduce one thing relating to the topic you've been asked to talk about. And although this story itself is not related directly to the topic that you're referring to, the whole story, when you put it together, is. So you're not going off topic, you're just referring to some past experience that is directly related to the subject you've been asked to talk about.